All right, so something has just happened for the first time this cycle that historically is a trigger for altcoin upside. In today's video, I'm going to talk about what that trigger is and why I think it could spell a turning of the tide for the market. I'm also going to be going into what has happened over the last 24 hours with the Nvidia earnings, a potential Bitcoin local top. Don't freak out. I want to give you the objective chart and take a look at what I'm seeing there and why it's not exactly what you think. And then in the second half of the show, I'm going to do a rapid fire segment where I go through a bunch of opportunities in the market because I realized I actually have a lot of alpha today. There are a lot of individual altcoin plays. There are some ideas that I have for the future. So I'm just going to do a rapid fire and just get it all out there. And then you can take the specific ideas that you want and act on them. I'm personally acting on a few of them and I'll explain what they are. So if you are enjoying the daily shows again, make sure to smash the like button to show the algorithm some love. You guys blew up yesterday's like button and the video performed really, really well. So show us some love again for bringing this classic format back. And also make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss a single daily update. My number one goal at the moment is to give you the best crypto alpha every single day. I want you to know that when you click on a Miles Deutscher video, you're going to get actionable alpha. And by the end of the video, there's going to be something for you to do. Whether it's an altcoin play, whether it's a general market play, I'm not here to waste anyone's time. I'm here to give people the info that they need to know. So let's kick off exactly with that. What do you need to know in the altcoin market today? Well, let's just look through a few of the major performers. SPX continues to outperform. That's something I mentioned on yesterday's show. TON is outperforming today. There's actually some alpha slash strategy that I want to go through regarding TON that I'm going to speak about at the end of today's video. There is a play that I think is quite undervalued in the TON ecosystem. And there's also been news about Durov and XAI and Elon that I want to talk about. They basically announced that they were going to be partnering, and then Elon came out and said that they're not doing a deal. So I'll go through that at the end because I think there is actually a trade there and the TON setup looks really interesting at the moment. And then Lido and ENS are pumping off the back of Ethereum strength. So some of the ETH betas are doing well, and that's also something I want to discuss today. What are some of the top ETH beta plays? And we'll go through some of the charts. Clearly, those are the two leaders, but I think there are more, and I think there are a couple of hidden plays people are missing. But before we get into all of the altcoin fun stuff, firstly, let's do a quick recap because I mentioned the Nvidia earnings in yesterday's show, and we had Nvidia's earnings and they're actually quite good, but Bitcoin didn't really react that positively. Actually, technically it's down since yesterday. It is having a little bit of a bounce at the moment, but it's just been chopping in this all-time high range for the last few days. So it's pretty hard to get a read on Bitcoin right now. And for me, when I don't have a clear read on the market, I'm not trying to force directionality. So I'm not going to make a big call today about, oh, Bitcoin is going to break new all-time highs, or, oh, we are going to sweep 104K. I'll just say this. I think Bitcoin, from a high time frame perspective, as you can see, is very well positioned for more upside. There's so much institutional interest. There's sovereign interest. We recently saw some tweaks to the 401k, which are going to allow people to add, Bitcoin to their 401k. So there's a big passive bid that we've never seen before coming in for Bitcoin. Clearly, this holds us in very good long-term stead. And overall, if you look at the macro picture with the money printing, with increased liquidity across global markets over the next 6 to 12 months, I do think that'll fare well for Bitcoin. However, in the shorter term, it becomes a little bit harder to predict because I do think there's a possibility that we cool down a little bit here on Bitcoin. And if you just look at the daily chart and even the weekly chart, considering that we've had seven, and this could be the 8th green consecutive weekly candle in a row, it does make sense at some point for Bitcoin to cool down, especially with the RSI this high. Now, previously we have seen it be high for a matter of months, but I just want to point out that Bitcoin's already been on a huge run, and at some point it's going to need to cool down. Now, 104K is your target for that. You have confluence on the horizontal as well as the money noodle moving average that we use in the Mars High Club. Potentially we come back up for a little bit and then sweep this level and then maybe chop for a bit before going on a run maybe slightly later in the year. That's one of my scenarios if this ends up being a local top for Bitcoin. So that's just my general thoughts, and I'm going to get into altcoins and tell you what it means for altcoins in a couple of minutes here, but that's my general thoughts on Bitcoin, right? Looking at the crypto fear and greed as well, we have been in this greedy territory for quite some time. I like to do most of my big long-term buying, especially on Bitcoin during major dips. The last time I made a huge buy, I was very public, was on April 5th and April 6th, where or maybe it was April 7th. It was during this period, during the tariff FUD, where I did a video saying that I was making my biggest Bitcoin buys of all time. I posted on Twitter as well that everyone was way too scared, and that was the time to capitalize on Bitcoin. I don't think the time to be aping into long-term Bitcoin is at resistance, and also when fear and greed has been this greedy for an extended period of time. Just putting it out there, in the crypto markets in general, it's better to buy extreme fear than it is to buy extreme greed, of course. However, the market is a little bit conflicting right now for two reasons. You have the juxtaposition of Bitcoin kind of looking topped in the short term, or at least it looks like it needs to cool down a little bit. But then you have alt setups and ETH BTC actually looking really good. So could this be the time in the market where, because alts haven't really run and Bitcoin dominance has been going up and up and up, could dominance come back to parity a little bit, come down and test this level, allowing altcoins to have a bit more breathing room, and then the next leg for Bitcoin actually continues to the upside where it makes new highs? I think this is a plausible scenario. The only thing in this scenario that I would have you consider is the fact that, look, if Bitcoin did sweep 104K again, which is definitely a possibility, maybe alts, even though they could hold up in terms of relative strength, they would still probably go down. Like, it's not a case of Bitcoin goes from 108 to 104 and alts explode. Like, I just don't see that being the case in this cycle. In previous cycles, that was the case because Bitcoin would sell off and then people would rotate into alts. But because a lot of this Bitcoin move is being powered by microsailor institutions, ETFs, we don't have that direct flow of funds into alts that we used to have. So I'm not going to come out here and make outlandish claims like, oh, if Bitcoin, drops to 104, then altcoins are going to explode, because I think that's nonsensical. But if Bitcoin does consolidate, I definitely think there's a solid setup for altcoins. But I am getting conflicting info at the moment. But let me give you some more nuance now on the altcoin side, and then I think it'll start to make sense. All right, something has happened for the first time this cycle, or specifically since May 2024. I guess it depends on when you think the cycle began. If you're saying that it was bear market lows in November 2022, then technically we've been in this cycle for many years. If you're talking about the uptrend, then it's probably in the beginning of or mid 2023 to early 2024. But nonetheless, this is the first time that we've seen an ETH BTC downtrend break since May 2024. It's been over a year, which is pretty crazy to consider. And you can see we have this golden cross of sorts also happening on the MACD. So this is now looking like a confirmed reversal for ETH BTC. I thought there was a possibility that when we were crossing the money noodle here and the RSI started to come up, that we would see a bit of a rejection here, but we ended up dipping and then breaking through for the second time now. Now, this is quite a good sign, because in the past, we would rally and then it would get faded. And we'd rally and it would get faded. And we'd rally and it would get faded. And everyone would get faked out. This is a pretty resounding move that's happened on the back of a few things. Obviously, the fact that Bitcoin's run a lot, ETH was lagging behind. The ETH spot premium is actually looking pretty decent at the moment. As you can see, demand from ETFs has slightly increased. So there's some retail interest coming into the market for ETH. And we also have the new micro strategy of Ethereum launching and potential other funds doing the same thing. And obviously, the Trump administration has been backing Ethereum as well. So although I'm not like the biggest Ethereum bull on the planet, I don't even hold that much long-term ETH, I do think for altcoins, this is worth paying attention to, because historically, big moves in alts, if you look back in the history of crypto over the last few years, they have happened when ETH is performing well versus BTC. And it's because of this fact. As I mentioned before, because we don't have a traditional flow of funds on Bitcoin, that rotation isn't necessarily happening from Bitcoin into altcoins now like it used to. However, that wealth transfer effect is still very valid when it comes to Ethereum specifically, because there is a very direct on-chain flow of funds that happens from ETH holders into altcoins. So because ETH isn't being as driven by the sailors and the institutions, and there's a lot more ETH whales on chain, their propensity to gamble and the actual gambling that occurs when ETH rallies is much more clear than it is on Bitcoin now, which is why if you're an altcoin fan, even if you don't love Ethereum, you should probably be rooting for an Ethereum pump here. You don't even need to hold Ethereum to be wanting this trend to continue. Now, Of course, this could just be a matter of us coming up to test this weekly and then getting rejected again, and then, Bitcoin keeps rallying. That could definitely happen, but I'm just asking you now to start paying attention to ETH BTC and watching this chart very, very closely, because this can be a trigger for altcoin outperformance, specifically the Ethereum ecosystem outperformance, and we're going to touch on in just a minute here some of the top plays that you can use to take advantage. And what's happened is, alongside this ETH reversal, you're also now seeing not a complete reversal on the altcoin season index, but what you are now seeing is finally altcoins have exited the Bitcoin season territory, and now the market is sitting in the neutral zone. Obviously, it's still towards the bottom of the neutral zone, and we did have a pump a couple of months ago, and that got faded, but a couple of weeks ago, but it's still something to consider that we have come out of this Bitcoin season zone and we've seen some sort of reprieve on alts. Now, just want to make it clear, I think the trend for dominance is up. I think it still goes to 70% in terms of the macro cycle, and that's likely going to be driven by a new Bitcoin all-time high. But what I'm saying is, in the short term, I think there could be continued outperformance on ETH, BTC, and on altcoins. Now, this also begs the question, is probably for another video, when would alts have that big cycle-defining moment and actually have a breakdown of this dominance, which we haven't actually had since 2022? Well, I think that will only happen once Bitcoin puts in its peak. So there will be a time where Bitcoin goes to 130, 140, 150, maybe even high 100s. Fred Krueger and some other analysts are saying 200K plus. At that point, obviously you'll see a bit of front running on alts, but at that point, only when Bitcoin comes close to its peak is when you're likely to see like a big blow off altcoin season, because the signs of froth, the signs of mania, the signs of blow off aren't there yet. Obviously, we kind of had that in November a little bit, and we had it in January in the trenches, but we haven't had it on Ethereum and major alts. Obviously, this cycle is very different. I've spoken about that a lot, about the importance of making sure you're in the right assets, about the importance of risk management, because not everything's going to go up all at once. But if you are asking the question, when would be the best chance of an up-only season? Well, I'm telling you, it's when Bitcoin puts in its peak. Until then, you're going to see periods of outperformance, and I'm signaling to you now that there could be one of those periods starting to occur, and that's being signaled by the ETH BTC chart. So in terms of actionable stuff, what would I actually do? Because I'm not saying, go out and long all these altcoins, because obviously Bitcoin is technically at a resistance level, and this reversal hasn't been happening for long. It's only been a couple of weeks. So what would I practically do right now? Well, what I would be doing is, in order to limit risk and increase upside, I would be focusing on the sectors that are most closely tied to Ethereum and are most closely tied to the current paradigm in terms of the regulatory stuff that we're seeing, aka DeFi, aka stablecoins, aka ETH betas. These are the plays that I'm looking at. And I'm going to go through some of them now, and then we're going to get into my rapid fire section where I take a look at just a bunch of alpha in the market, because I just want to bring you alpha in these shows primarily. The first one's PENDLE. I think this is good because it kind of fits the stablecoin narrative and DeFi narrative whilst fitting the whole deregulation of decentralized exchanges and decentralized protocols narrative, and it's also an ETH beta in a way, because there's staking derivatives that are available on PENDLE. Now, obviously, it has pumped quite a bit, but I would be looking for shorter-term trading opportunities on PENDLE, on the 1 hour, on the 4 hour, and then on any major dip, I would be looking at potentially getting involved. If you look at the daily, if we come back down to the noodle, that's looking from its current levels, like 15%, I would be looking to position in PENDLE. I already have a position, but that's where I'd be looking to build, and I would also do that alongside looking at trading opportunities on the lower time frame. Then you have PEPE as well. PEPE is interesting because it's starting to form a flag. So you've got two options here. I'll go on to the 4 hour so it's more clear. If we get back to this bottom zone again, I would look at bidding with inval below. But because technically we are in an uptrend here and we are making higher lows, what I would look at doing is actually bidding a retest in this zone. We're actually quite close to it now. And continuously playing the consolidation as long as it's above this high here, because I think that could lead to this high retest. And then if you go back onto the daily, potentially moving even higher, because PEPE is one of the leading ETH betas, and it also has the hype from, the whole James Wynn gambling thing, which I think bodes well for PEPE. So this is one that I'm holding in my longer term portfolio, but I'm also, trading it as well. Lido and ENS are two other ones to note. Obviously, they're the ones that have led out of the gates. By the way, I really like the new Banter Bubbles website here. They did an update. It's a bit more black in the background, a bit more contrast. Killing crypto bubbles. I can't believe I used to use crypto bubbles every day. This is much better. But Lido is obviously one of those that's been outperforming alongside ENS. Look, for me, I don't find holding Lido long-term like a tantalizing proposition. I'd probably rather hold PENDLE. I'd probably rather hold ENA and Fluid, like I'm going to be discussing in a minute. But I do not mind the idea of trading it if you're trying to look at an ETH Beta. But you can always make the argument, well, it's probably just better to hold ETH in that case. I don't hate that idea. And then looking at ENA as well, Athena, if you want to go onto the daily chart here, you can see that it's now started to finally flip momentum. So for a long time on the noodle, it rejected off, like it was in a downtrend. This is the first consolidation we've had above the noodle, and you also have the RSI bottoming out and starting to reset. And ENA is one of these plays that when ETH runs, it tends to run. So I hold some of this long term, but I'd definitely be looking at trading ENA as well, especially as it's consolidating above a key level, both the noodle and also on the horizontal here. If this pops, it won't be hard to break, the 46 level, and you're probably going to target. Obviously range high is the ideal target, but even if it doesn't get there, there's upside to squeeze here. And it's also part of the stablecoin narrative. So it's an ETH beta, stablecoin narrative, beaten down and finally has a trend flip. So I like it as a play. And then the other one's Fluid. I didn't bring up the chart because it's pretty hard to get a TA REIT due to the amount of choppiness because it's relatively low liquidity. Not crazily, but just, relatively. It seems to chop a little bit because the depth on Bybit and OKX isn't great. But I do like it fundamentally. So Fluid is like one of these new age dexes. I think it's got good tokenomics. It's got a very good flywheel behind it. And as a user, I enjoy using the protocol. And if you do look at the price, it peaked out at around $9. It has come back a substantial amount. It dropped to $3.48. It's bounced back to $4.42. Once again, it's pretty hard to do TA on this, but I just wanted to tell you that this is one that's in my longer term portfolio. And if you're looking for an ETH/stablecoin/DeFi beta all in one, this is something that I would also look at. I'm holding some Fluid in my portfolio. So those are probably the 5 that I would look at in terms of ETH betas that I either A, hold, or B, would be trading. All right, now let's get into some sporadic alpha. I've got some good stuff here, some interesting trading ideas, and yeah, let's just bang through it. Firstly, I want to touch on the stablecoin narrative. This is also close to the whole Ethereum narrative. I talked about this yesterday, but if you missed yesterday's show, there is a big reform happening with stablecoins in the US. Clearly, one of the things they're trying to do is really push towards stablecoin regulation through their stablecoin bill. And what this does is it opens the floodgates for stablecoin protocols and for stablecoin adoption, institutional adoption, etc. So what are some things that I would do in terms of positioning in the stablecoin narrative? Well, obviously, you've got coins like ENA, like we discussed before, PENDLE, MakerDAO, etc. They're the obvious ones. But some new ones that I would look at is firstly Plasma. Plasma's a new protocol. They haven't launched the token yet, but they have deposits opening in, I think, 11 days' time. This is Paolo's new Tether chain. So it's by the same guys that are behind Tether. It's going to be the Tether chain, so to speak. Jose put out this funny meme, how there's 3 types of people right now. There's people on the left curve, Tether chain good. People on the right end of the spectrum, Tether chain good. And then people in the middle, the mid curvers, no, there's nothing uniquely enabled by an app-specific stablecoin chain. We don't need more blockchains. But I think he's right. I think these are the mid curvers. I think if you actually think about Tether, everyone wants a piece of that business because it's so profitable. Everyone wishes they could invest in Tether, but you can't. You can hold the stablecoin, but it's not accruing interest. Who's accruing interest? The Tether Foundation. So there's been a lack of investable proxies until this, because once this Plasma token launches, what you're essentially going to have, it's the XPL token. You're going to have a roundabout way to bet on Tether. Now, no, it's not technically betting on Tether, and no, you're not getting upside to the underlying business model, but it's a strong narrative. You can't invest. This you can invest in. A retailer will invest in it for that reason. If you look at ONDO, it's the same thing, right? You can't invest in BlackRock RWAs, but you can invest in ONDO. Crypto is all about narratives, and I think this has a really strong narrative. So you might be asking, how do you get involved? Well, the only way right now is through the public sale. This is a post that's officially on their X account, which tells you how to do it. To secure an allocation, let me scroll down and read this. To secure an allocation, deposit stablecoins into the Plasma Vault on Ethereum, powered by Veda Labs. Your time-weighted share of total deposits determines your allocation. So obviously, the more you deposit and the longer you deposit, and you still got 11 days to do this, the bigger your allocation is going to be. Before the sale begins, the vault locks. At mainnet beta, your position bridges to Plasma, becoming withdrawable, and XPL is distributed. Deposits open in 2 weeks or 11 days. So if you want to deposit, you can deposit now. I think they're raising like 50 mil at a 500 mil valuation. There are some caveats I want to give you though. Because it's quite a high FDV, and because your allocation might not be huge and you're probably going to need to deposit a lot of capital to get a decent allocation, something that I would definitely consider is also just playing the liquid game. So what you could do is you could try and get involvement in the public sale. I don't know whether the valuation is going to be 500 mil. I think personally it'll be more. So I think the EV is positive here. But I would also save some capital, or some of you may even choose to, bypass this entirely and just play it on launch. Because what happened with a token like Anisha, for example, that had a similar fundraise, it rallies and it kind of has this airdrop fractal where it rallies hard, then it drops off and it forms a range and you have ability to accumulate lower. I think a similar thing could happen with XPL. Like it might rally and do really well at first, and then as people sell their initial allocations or panic sell, it'll come down, and once it reaches a floor, then you can buy into the liquid market. So I think there are really two ways to play it, or both in tandem. One, get involved in the public sale on Echo Dot. There's not that much downside to doing this, but you are locking up capital, and you might not get a huge allocation. And then two, what you can also do is just play it on launch. And I mean, in terms of pure size, most of my size will be on launch if I do think there's an opportunity there. And of course, I'll keep you updated as opportunities arise. So that's probably the newest, hottest kid on the block when it comes to this stablecoin narrative, which I think is a big one. I've already spoken about some of the majors. I'll touch on another lower cap right now though, and that's Asymmetry Finance. They just announced USDAF, and I do think this is one of the stronger lower cap stablecoin protocols in crypto. It's backed by Fidelity, Frax, Republic Capital, Side Door Ventures, and it's actually a very smart design. They've got their two stablecoins, and basically, depending on the period and the amount that you lock, you can choose your yield. So it's fixed, not variable. I think this appeals to bigger players, whales, institutions that want to, lock more capital, benefit from the stablecoin yields, which I think, can be quite high, like 17% or so. So it appeals to them and potentially can be a bit of a bridge or a gateway between, institutions and access to stablecoin yields on chain. So I do like Asymmetry Finance. I want to touch on the price action though, because it did have a big dip over the last 24 hours. If you watched my show yesterday, I did say that when it comes to new launches, you have to be wary of buy the rumor, sell the news. And I said in that video, if it did have a sell the news event, that could be an opportunity to buy. And I generally think that's what's happening at the moment. We're getting that sell-off, so anyone that was playing the whole launch game, bought in, price went up, and then it's classic sell the news. They launched their product, and then price dumps. Pretty standard price action in crypto, and something I expected and, warned you guys about. But I think now, actually, that we're coming down to the money noodle on the daily, which is a key level that it's adhered to. RSI starting to reset a little bit. And you also have this, key horizontal breakout level at $1.40. These could be better entry zones. And I'm actually quite glad, as someone that wanted to buy more of the token, that it didn't just keep rocketing, because it's now from the launch day down like 25 to 30%. So this is now becoming a good opportunity, I think, to DCA. But of course, do your research. You need to A, make sure you're bullish on the stablecoin narrative. You need to, B, make sure that you like the protocol. And if you do, then you can just DCA in. I think it's pretty clear. And obviously, we have all of our disclosures in the description below every single show and on my website. But we are partners as well on the show with Asymmetry Finance. That's not the reason I'm talking about the token, because if you're a show partner, it's focused on the product, and I think they have a great product. But personally, and I wouldn't say this if I didn't have conviction, personally, I like the token itself as well, which is why I am mentioning it. But that's a good reminder to you that if you ever want to see my vested interest, because I'm one of the most transparent creators in the space, in every single description, we always have any vested interest, whether I'm, holding or partnered with a token or anything. Like, it's always in my website, always in the description. So hopefully you can refer to that if you ever want to know anything. I thought I'd remind you for like the new viewers that maybe aren't aware of it. All right, now let's get on to the last two pieces of sporadic alpha for you. Bit of a disjointed show, but I'm like, I just had so much info this morning that I wanted to share that I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to hit him with a few trade ideas. And there's definitely been a few today. You've got the ETH betas, my overall thoughts on the market. You've got Plasma, ASF, the Stablecoin Narrative, and now I want to get into the next one, which is Telegram. So this is kind of funny. Pavel Durov, the founder of Telegram, said that this summer, he did a tweet, Telegram users will gain access to the best AI tech on the market. Elon Musk and I have agreed to a 1-year partnership to bring XAI's Grok to a billion plus users through the Telegram app. Now, after this was announced, TON pumped massively and it wicked up to $3.70. And then Elon Musk replied 8 hours later and said no deal has been signed, basically debunking this. And since then, Pavel Durov has deleted this tweet. Here's what I think. I don't think he would have tweeted this if there wasn't a real deal behind the scenes. And I don't think he would have tweeted this if this wasn't already something that's in the works. And technically, although Elon came out and said no deal has been signed, he didn't say no deal exists, right? So it might be a case of they haven't signed a deal, but they were discussing doing a deal. And for some reason, obviously someone's really screwed up and they've accidentally announced it, or he's gotten the wrong info from his team, like it's signed and technically the lawyers hadn't signed it. We don't know what happened, right? But I don't think he'd be talking about this if it wasn't something that they were looking at doing. Also, this clearly signals to the market their interest in integrating AI. So if it's not XAI, I'm sure they'll do something with OpenAI or, Gemini or another model. And clearly that's going to be a good thing for Telegram users. So although it's in a roundabout way, I think TON does get some more mindshare and attention from this. And if an official announcement were to be confirmed, I think that could be a catalyst for TON. And in isolation, I was like, okay, that narrative's a little bit weak. But then I started to look at the chart. And then I was like, wow, the chart actually looks really good. And this is a chart that I would look at longing irrespective of the news. So the fact that this integration could be coming and could be a big narrative for TON is kind of validation behind what I was already seeing on the chart. So what am I seeing on the chart? I'm already seeing an uptrend. I'm already seeing these higher lows. I'm seeing a base starting to form above this horizontal. And I'm also seeing a money noodle retest on the 3-day. Now, yes, we wicked up, but what will happen is this will come down. The next time we break, you could definitely look at playing the retest of the money noodle and then the next break of that local high. So looking for a potential breakout play here and you can also draw it like this if you prefer diagonals, but looking at a breakout trade here, I think could be quite advantageous. If we do come back down to the bottom of the horizontal first, then I'll long that level and set a stop below. So there are two scenarios. You can either long this zone here with inval below, or you can long a confirmed breakout or a retest with inval below that. So I might do 50-50, but I do think TON looks good as a trade and as a setup here, both from a leverage and a spot perspective, depending on how you trade. And then I wanted to give some alpha for the people that are even more risk on and say, look, there's a meme coin in the TON ecosystem that was huge, Redo, Resistance Dog, that is also now starting to break and has a very similar setup to TON. So if this breaks and we get a confirmed retest here, this is also one that I'll enter. Now, this is stuff that I don't know if I'll have time to update you live on the show. I will in my Discord, of course, because I just don't know when this will break. But I want you to mark this on your charts right now. And when I give alpha in the shows, generally speaking, what you should do so you don't forget it is set an alert for these coins and take notes of the things you like and research it in your own time. I think people need to utilize the information on the shows better, in my opinion. I think we have a lot of great researchers, and obviously my mind going behind creating the shows. Why not get the notebook out? Why not pause the video every time there's some good alpha, have your laptop open and prompt ChatGPT and get a summary, or take the transcript from Glasp and get a summary, and then start marking these things on your own watch list. I just want to tell you that information is only as good as what you do with the information. And there might be some ideas here that you don't like. You might hate, asymmetry finance, or you might not think the stablecoin narrative is big, or you might not trust the ETH pump, sure, but you might like the TON alpha, or you might like the idea that I'm going to give you in a couple of minutes as well for another trade, and then that might be the thing that you take away. So the goal of these shows is just to give you alpha, and then you take away what you want. You might just come to these shows for the market update and take that away. You might come to these shows for the altcoin alpha, you take that away. I just want to make sure that, by the end of each show, you're getting information that you can act on ultimately and be a value add or a net positive to your daily research. So Redo is another one as a Telegram beta that I would look at. I don't have exposure to this, but I would trade it if the setup presents. And then the last bit of information I want to give you, and I don't actually have the tweet because I accidentally deleted it, but I'll tell you what the tweet was. The tweet was basically highlighting the fact that a lot of the staked hype unlocks were happening this week. And it does make sense as well that these unlocks are starting at the same time that we are seeing a bit of a reversal on hype. So if you look at the 4 hour, we are starting to get what looks like bearish confirmation of a retest here on the money noodle. And what I think could happen is hype could actually come back down a little bit more to the $30 zone. This was one of the key breakout levels before we came back up, and then on that dip that could be a great chance to load up hype, because I know a lot of you are bullish on Hyperliquid but you didn't want to buy into the hype, so to speak. Well, you have two options: play the bottom of this zone around $32 if we come back down there, or you can wait for the money noodle to come up and then play a retest of that average, but that's going to take a couple more weeks to play out. But because there are some hype unlocks this week, I just want you to keep your eye on the chart, because if you get any big wicks or a bigger sell-off, that could be an opportunity to accumulate. I still think Hyperliquid will be much higher than this at some point in the cycle. It's the best bet on DEXs. However, you also need to make sure that you're buying in during major dips and not during major pumps. But thought I'd mention it today because this is the first major dip that we've gotten in some time. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. That's all I have for you today. I'll be back tomorrow as usual with a brand new set of alpha. And yeah, I'll see you then. Remember to smash the like button and subscribe if you aren't already. See you in the next one, guys. Peace out.